The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside on humid days. The walls were made of black stone brought from a dead world at the edge of known space. Every species that had ever joined the council had added something to this room, and after 40,000 years, it had become a place of terrible beauty. Catherine Moore did not feel small. She had felt small once, many years ago, when she first walked into this hall as a young diplomat. That was before she understood how the council really worked. That was before she saw her people used and thrown away like broken tools. Now she stood at the speaking platform in the center of the room, and she felt nothing but calm. Behind her stood the entire human delegation. 50 men and women who had given their lives to serving humanity among the stars. 50 men and women who had finally had enough. The council members sat in their great chairs arranged in a circle around the platform. The Solari Dominion held the largest section, their insect-like bodies gleaming under the lights. The Volanthi sat in their special seats that kept them cool enough to survive, their bodies made of living crystal that sang quietly when they moved. The Dasani Federation had sent their usual group of gray-skinned diplomats, who always voted however the Solari told them to vote. And then there were the smaller species. The Morthani with their many eyes. The Korath with their thick armor-like skin. The Preservers, ancient and quiet, who watched everything but said almost nothing. High Counselor Vethaner of the Solari Dominion raised one of his 4 arms. The room fell silent. The human delegation has requested time to speak, Vethaner said. His voice came out as clicks and hisses, but the translation device made his words clear. We will hear them, though I cannot imagine what could be so important that it requires the full council's attention. Several council members made sounds that might have been laughter. Catherine waited until the room was quiet again. Then she spoke. 312 years ago, humanity discovered faster than light travel. We were so excited. We thought we were going to meet friends among the stars. We thought we were going to join something wonderful. She paused and looked around the room. We found you instead. The laughter stopped. For 300 years, we have served this council. Our engineers built your ships. Our doctors cured your plagues. Our soldiers died fighting your wars. Our farmers grew food for your hungry worlds. Our scientists solved problems that your people could not solve. Catherine pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. A holographic display appeared above the platform, showing numbers and charts. In the last century alone, human workers have contributed over 40 trillion credits worth of labor to council projects. Human soldiers have died in 17 different wars to protect council territory. Human inventors have created over 6,000 new technologies that the council now uses every day. She pressed another button. The display changed. And what have we received in return? We have no voting rights on matters that affect our own colonies. We are not allowed to own property on any world outside our home system without special permission. Our ships are searched at every border. Our people are treated as second-class citizens everywhere they go. Vethaner clicked his mandibles together. You were given the great gift of joining galactic civilization. You should be grateful. Grateful, Catherine repeated. She said the words slowly, like she was tasting something bitter. Yes, you have said that to us many times. Be grateful. Know your place. Wait your turn. She turned off the holographic display and put the device back in her pocket. We are tired of waiting. The room became very quiet. Even the Volanthi stopped their quiet singing. The United Earth Collective has voted, Catherine continued. The vote was unanimous across all human colonies, all human stations, all human ships. Every single human citizen who could vote did vote, and they all said the same thing. She straightened her shoulders and spoke clearly so that every being in the room could hear her. We are leaving. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. All human workers on Council worlds will return home within 30 days. All human ships in Council space will depart within 60 days. All trade agreements, military alliances, and scientific partnerships are ended. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Vethener began to laugh. It was an ugly sound, like metal scraping against metal. Leave? And go where? Back to your little yellow star? You have nothing without us, human. Your entire civilization depends on Council technology and Council trade. Catherine smiled. It was not a warm smile. You have never really understood us, have you? We did not come to the stars because we needed to. We came because we wanted to. And now we want to go home. Commander Daniel Price stood behind Catherine. He had been a soldier for 30 years, and he had fought in 4 wars for the Council. He had watched good men and women die to protect worlds that called them animals behind their backs. He had received medals from species that would not let him eat in their restaurants. He was glad it was finally over. One of the Volante delegates rose from her seat. Her crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. "This is too fast," she said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "Surely we can negotiate. There must be something you want that we can provide." Catherine shook her head. 300 years ago, we wanted friendship. 200 years ago, we wanted respect. 100 years ago, we wanted fairness. Now we want nothing from you at all. That is the one thing you cannot negotiate. She gathered the documents on the speaking platform. Physical copies of the withdrawal notice, signed by every human leader, stamped with every human seal. We have sent copies of our withdrawal to every Council world. Our people have already begun packing. Our ships are already warming their engines. She looked at Vethener one last time. You built your empire on the assumption that we would always be here to do the work you did not want to do. You were wrong. The human delegation turned and began to walk toward the great doors at the far end of the hall. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. "You will regret this," Vethener called after them. "You will come crawling back within a year. You need us more than we need you." Catherine stopped at the doors. She did not turn around. Perhaps you have forgotten what life was like before we came. I suspect you will remember soon enough. The doors opened. The human delegation walked out. The doors closed behind them with a sound like a heart-stopping dot in the Council chamber. No one spoke for a very long time. Finally, the preserver elder named Voskin rose from his seat. He was the oldest living being in the room, and perhaps the oldest living being in the galaxy. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had seen species come and go. "I have lived for 11,000 years, he said quietly, "and I have never seen anyone walk away from this council. Not once. Not ever." He looked at the empty platform where Catherine had stood. "I think we have made a terrible mistake." No one disagreed with him, but no one did anything about it either. And so the humans left quietly, and the galaxy did not yet understand what it had lost. 6 months passed, and the first problems began to appear. On the farm world of Thesan 4, a Morthani overseer named Crixel stood at the edge of a dying field. The plants that should have been tall and green were brown and wilted. The soil that should have been rich and dark was gray and hard. He remembered how it had looked when the humans were here. The fields had stretched to the horizon like a green ocean. The harvests had been so large that ships came from 20 different worlds to carry the food away. Now the ships sat empty in orbit. There was nothing to carry. What happened? Crixel asked his assistant, a young Morthani named Tevin. Tevin checked his datapad. "The soil parasites have returned. The crops that the humans developed were resistant to them. But we did not know how to make more seeds. We tried to use our own farming methods, but they do not work on this world. Did the humans leave any instructions? Yes, many instructions. But they are written in technical language that we do not understand. The human farmers who worked here tried to teach our people, but we did not listen. We thought we did not need to learn. Crixel looked at the dead fields and felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt afraid. How much food do we have stored? Enough for 3 months. Maybe 4 if we cut the rations. 3 months. On a world that used to feed billions far away. In the shipyards that orbited the gas giant Marin. The situation was even worse. Chief Engineer Umuth of the Korath stood in the construction bay and stared at the skeleton of an unfinished ship. The vessel was supposed to be the pride of the Council fleet. The most advanced warship ever built. It had been designed by a team of human and Korath engineers working together. The human engineers were gone now, and the ship sat unfinished. We tried to complete the power core, Umuth told the council inspector who had come to check on progress. We followed the instructions exactly. But something went wrong. The inspector, a Solari named Vethkin, who was related to the High Counselor, looked at the damage report on his pad. 3 engineers dead. The entire rear section destroyed. 16 months of work lost. The quantum field harmonics, Umuth said. The human engineer Sophie Grant, she was the only one who truly understood how they worked. She tried to teach us, but the mathematics were beyond our understanding. She made it look easy. Where is this Sophie Grant now? On Earth. She left with the others. Vethkin made an angry clicking sound. Then contact her. Offer her money. Offer her whatever she wants. Umuth shook his head. We tried. She refused. She said that she spent 15 years trying to share her knowledge with us, and we treated her like a servant. She said she has no interest in helping us anymore. The inspector stared at the ruined ship. 16 months of work. 3 engineers dead. And this was just one shipyard among hundreds. How many other projects require human expertise? He asked. Umuth checked his records. At this facility, 47. Across all council shipyards, over 3,000. On Earth, Sophie Grant sat in her apartment in Chicago and watched the rainfall. Her husband Nathan brought her tea and sat beside her on the couch. Another request from the Korath, she said, looking at her pad. They are offering 10 times my old salary, plus full citizenship rights, plus a house on any world I choose. Are you going to accept? Sophie laughed, but there was no humor in it. They killed my friend. Did I tell you about Marcus? Marcus Webb. He was an engineer like me. He worked on the Korath homeworld for 12 years. He saved their orbital stations when the power grid failed. He taught their students. He helped them build ships that they could never have built on their own. She put down her pad and stared out the window. When he got sick, they would not let him use their hospitals. Humans were not allowed. He had to travel 4 days to reach a human medical station. He died on the way. He died because they would not let a human use a hospital that he had helped to build. Nathan put his arm around her. I am sorry. They did not even send a message to his family. We found out through the news. And now they want me to come back and help them? Now they offer citizenship and houses? She shook her head. It is too late. 300 years too late. On the council homeworld of Varus Prime, High Counselor Vethnar held an emergency meeting with his advisors. The reports coming in from across council space were all bad. The food production on 17 agricultural worlds was failing. The shipyards were falling behind schedule on every project. The medical facilities were running low on medicines that only human chemists knew how to make. The banks were struggling with financial instruments that only human mathematicians understood the communication networks were developing problems that only human programmers could fix. This is temporary. Wegener insisted. Our people will learn. They will adapt. The humans were not special. They were just convenient. His chief advisor, an old Solari named Kethmer, looked at the reports and said nothing. He had lived long enough to know that the High Counselor did not want to hear the truth, but he thought about the humans he had known over the years. He thought about their strange habit of working, even when they did not have to. Their odd desire to make things better, even things that did not belong to them. Their stubborn refusal to accept that something was impossible. He had always thought these traits were weaknesses, signs of a young and foolish species. Now he was beginning to wonder if he had been wrong. In the months that followed, the problems grew worse. Ships broke down, and there was no one to fix them. Crops failed, and there was no one to grow new ones. Machines stopped working, and there was no one who understood how they worked. The Council sent messages to Earth, polite messages at first, then demanding messages, then begging messages. The humans did not respond. They were not being cruel. They were simply busy building new farms on their own worlds, busy fixing their own ships, busy teaching their own children, busy living their own lives. For the first time in 300 years, they were free. And they were not going to give that freedom up. Not for money, not for power, not for anything the Council could offer. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. You cannot treat people badly for centuries and then expect them to help you when you need them. You cannot call someone a servant and then be surprised when they stop serving. The humans had not left to hurt the Council. They had left to help themselves. And if the Council suffered because of it, that was not the humans' fault. It was simply the natural result of 300 years of cruelty. And the worst part was that it was only the beginning. 18 months after the humans left, the plague came. It started on a small world near the border of Council space, a mining colony called Vareth 3. The workers there began to cough. Then they began to bleed. Then they began to die. Within a week, it had spread to 6 more worlds. Then 7. Then 20. The Council medical teams did everything they could. They quarantined the infected areas. They tested every medicine they had. They worked day and night trying to find a cure. Nothing worked. The plague was not natural. It had been created in a laboratory by the Sketh hegemony, old enemies of the Council who had been waiting for a moment of weakness. The disease was designed to resist every treatment that the Council had developed over 40,000 years, but it was not designed to resist human medicine. Dr. Samuel Wright sat in his office at Johns Hopkins Interstellar Research Center in Baltimore. The building was new, built after the withdrawal with human hands and human technology. Through his window, he could see the city stretching out toward the harbor, ships taking off and landing at the spaceport every few minutes. His assistant, a young woman named Rachel, knocked on his door. "The Council has sent another message," she said. "They are asking for help with the plague." "I know." Samuel had read the reports. 11 million infected, 2 million dead. The numbers growing every day. "What are they offering this time?" Rachel checked her pad. "Full voting rights for humanity. A permanent seat on the High Council. Reparations for past mistreatment. Return of all mining rights to the Kepler colonies." Samuel leaned back in his chair. 300 years of asking for these things, and now the Council was offering them freely. All it had taken was a plague that threatened to kill hundreds of millions. "What do you think we should do?" Rachel asked. "I think we should help them." Rachel looked surprised. "After everything they did to us?" Samuel stood up and walked to the window. "My grandfather was a doctor. He used to tell me something when I was young. He said that a doctor does not ask whether a patient deserves to be saved. A doctor just saves them. That is what makes us different from the people who hurt others. He turned back to Rachel. We are not going to let millions of people die just to prove a point. That would make us no better than the council was. The next day, Samuel sent a message to Deputy Secretary Laura Mitchell in Geneva. She was in charge of all official contact with the council now. She read his proposal and called a meeting with the Earth government. The discussion lasted for hours. Many people were angry. They wanted the council to suffer. They wanted revenge for 300 years of mistreatment. But in the end, humanity voted to help. Not because the council deserved it, but because humanity was better than that. Laura Mitchell met with the council envoy in a small conference room in Geneva. The envoy was a young Solari diplomat named Kethra. She was nervous. She had been told that humans were cruel and selfish. She had been told they would demand impossible things in exchange for help. She was wrong. We will send medical teams to every affected world, Laura said. Our doctors will work with your doctors to develop a cure. We will share all of our research freely. We will not charge you anything. Kethra was confused. You want nothing in return? I did not say that. Laura put down her coffee cup. We want one thing. We want you to remember. Remember what? Remember that we helped you when we did not have to. Remember that we saved your people when you had spent 300 years treating our people like dirt. Remember that we could have let you die, and we chose not to. Laura stood up and walked to the window. We are not rejoining the council. That is not going to happen. But we will not be your enemies either. We will help you when you are in trouble, because that is who we are. That is who we have always been. She turned back to face Kethra. And the next time one of your leaders says that humans are animals or servants or second-class citizens, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that the animals saved your lives. Dr. Samuel Wright led the first medical team to the infected worlds. He brought 50 doctors and scientists with him, the best that Earth had to offer. They carried equipment that the Council had never seen, medicines that the Council could not make. Within a week, they had developed a treatment. Within a month, they had developed a cure. Within 3 months, the plague was contained. 11 million lives saved. Samuel worked alongside the local doctors every day. He did not treat them as servants. He treated them as partners. He taught them everything he knew. He answered every question they asked. He stayed until the work was done. On his last day on Vareth III, a Morthani doctor named Teval came to see him off. I do not understand, Teval said. We treated your people so badly. Why did you help us? Samuel thought about his grandfather. He thought about all the doctors who had come before him, all the way back to ancient Earth. He thought about what it meant to be human. Because that is what humans do, he said. We help people. Even people who have hurt us. Even people who do not deserve it. We cannot help it. It is in our nature. Teval was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised Samuel. I am sorry. For everything. For how we treated you. For how we treated all of your people. I am sorry. Samuel shook his hand. I know. And maybe someday, things will be different between our peoples. But for now, just remember what happened here. Remember that we came when you needed us. And maybe next time, you will treat the next young species a little better than you treated us. The human ships left the Council worlds and returned to Earth. They did not ask for rewards. They did not ask for thanks. They just went home and continued living their lives. But something had changed in the galaxy. The Council species looked at humanity differently now. They had always thought of humans as useful tools. Now they began to wonder if they had been wrong about everything. The plague was over. But the real sickness, the sickness in the soul of the Council, was just beginning to be recognized. and the cure for that sickness would take much longer to find. 3 years after the humans left, the galactic economy began to fall apart, but it did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, like a building with a cracked foundation. First, there were small problems. Then bigger problems. Then, problems that no one could fix. The human traders had controlled 30% of all shipping routes in Council space. Their ships were faster than anyone else's ships. Their captains knew the best paths through dangerous regions of space. Their crews could fix any problem that came up during a voyage. Without them, shipping times doubled, then tripled. Goods that used to arrive in weeks now took months. Fresh food rotted before it reached its destination. Medicine expired before it reached the patients who needed it. The human bankers had managed the complex financial systems that made trade between species possible. They had created ways for species with completely different ideas about money to do business with each other. They had built trust between worlds that had been enemies for thousands of years. Without them, contracts became worthless. Banks failed. Credits lost their value. Species that had traded peacefully for centuries began to fight over resources. The human lawyers had written the trade agreements that everyone depended on. These agreements were thousands of pages long, full of careful language that protected everyone's interests. Only the humans truly understood how they worked. Without them, disputes could not be resolved. Old arguments came back. New arguments started. The council courts were overwhelmed with cases that no one knew how to judge. On the council homeworld, Councillor Miravet of the Dasani Federation stood before the assembly and demanded action. "The humans are doing this on purpose," she said. Her gray skin had turned almost white with anger. "They are punishing us. They are watching us suffer, and they are enjoying it. Are they?" The voice came from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look. Elder Voskan of the Preservers stood slowly. His staff tapped against the stone floor as he walked to the center of the room. He moved carefully, like someone who had lived so long that he had learned patience with every step. "I have watched this council for a very long time," he said. "I watched when the humans first came to us, full of hope and excitement. I watched when we put them in the smallest seats and gave them the hardest jobs. I watched when they asked for fairness and we laughed at them." He stopped in the center of the chamber and looked around at the assembled delegates. "And now I am watching. US blamed them for our own failures." Miravet stepped forward. "They abandoned us. They broke all their agreements. They left us to suffer. Did they?" Voskan asked. "Let me tell you what I remember. I remember when we took their best workers and paid them the lowest wages. I remember when we used their inventions and gave them no credit. I remember when their soldiers died for us and we did not even learn their names." He raised his staff and pointed at the empty seats where the human delegation used to sit. "I remember when they asked for voting rights and we said no. When they asked for fair treatment and we said no. When they asked for basic respect and we said no, for 300 years. The chamber was silent. "This is not their revenge," Voskan continued. "This is simply what happens when you build your house on someone else's back, and then that someone stands up and walks away. The house falls down. That is not revenge. That is just gravity." He turned and began walking back to his seat. "We had the greatest gift the universe could offer. A young species full of energy and creativity and determination. And we threw that gift away because we could not imagine them as our equals. Now we are paying the price, and we deserve to pay it." No one argued with him. On Earth, President Christopher Blake addressed the United Nations General Assembly. The Great Hall was full of representatives from every human world and station. They had all been watching the collapse of the council economy with mixed feelings. "Some of you want revenge," Blake said. I understand that. After what the council did to us, after how they treated us, part of me wants revenge too. He paused and looked around the room. But revenge is not who we are. We did not leave the council to hurt them. We left because we wanted to live our own lives on our own terms. For the first time in 300 years, he walked to the edge of the stage. Right now, on Earth and on every human world, our children are growing up free. They do not have to work in someone else's mines. They do not have to fight in someone else's wars. They do not have to prove that they deserve to be treated as equals. They are free. That is what we fought for. That is what we left for. The assembly was quiet, listening. If the council suffers because we are no longer there to carry them, that is not our fault. We are not responsible for fixing problems that we did not create. We are not required to help people who refuse to help themselves. He stood straight and spoke clearly. But we will not celebrate their suffering either. We are better than that. We have always been better than that. And when this is over, when the council has learned its lesson, we will be here, ready to build something new, something fair, something that treats everyone as equals. He looked out at the assembly. That is the human way. We do not destroy. We build. We do not hate. We hope. And no matter what the galaxy has done to us, we will not let them change who we are. The assembly rose to their feet and applauded, not because they were celebrating the council's failure, but because they were proud of who they had become. Back on Varus Prime, the council continued to argue about what to do. Some wanted to force the humans to return. Some wanted to beg them to return. Some wanted to find a way to survive without them. But slowly, painfully, some began to understand the truth. The humans had not left to punish them. The humans had left to save themselves. And if the council wanted to survive, they would have to learn to do something they had never done before. They would have to learn to treat others as equals. They would have to learn to share power and respect and opportunity. They would have to become the kind of society that the humans had always hoped they would be done. It was a hard lesson, the hardest the council had ever learned, and many of them were not sure they could learn it in time. 10 years after the humans left quietly, the Galactic Council no longer existed. That did not end with a war or a great battle. It ended with 1,000 small failures, each one leading to the next, until there was nothing left to save. The Solari Dominion had retreated to their home systems. Without the income from human trade and labor, they could no longer afford their great fleets or their mighty stations. Their once proud empire had shrunk to a handful of worlds, struggling to feed themselves. The Dasani Federation had broken into 3 pieces. The different factions blamed each other for the collapse. Old hatreds that had been buried for centuries came back. Now they fought among themselves instead of building together. The Volanthi had closed their borders completely. Their crystal cities, once open to visitors from across the galaxy, were dark and silent. No one knew what was happening inside. The smaller species had scattered. Some had joined together in new alliances. Some had gone their own way. Some had simply disappeared. On a small coastal town in Maine on Earth, Catherine Moore lived quietly in retirement. She was old now. Her hair had turned completely white. Her hands shook sometimes when she poured her morning tea. But her mind was still sharp, and her eyes still saw clearly. One afternoon, she heard a knock at her door. She opened it and found a familiar figure standing on her porch. Vethaner, former High Counselor of the Solari Dominion, looked nothing like the proud leader who had laughed at humanity 10 years ago. His carapace had lost its shine. His forearms hung loosely at his sides. His eyes, which had once blazed with arrogance, now looked tired and old. "May I come in?" He asked. Catherine thought about all the time she had asked to speak with him, back when she was an ambassador. All the time she had been told to wait, to be patient, to know her place. All the time she had been treated like something less than a person. She stepped aside and let him in. They sat on her porch, looking out at the Atlantic Ocean. Catherine poured tea for both of them. Vethener accepted the cup awkwardly. His hands were not designed for human cups, but he managed. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The waves crashed against the rocks below. Seabirds called to each other in the distance. The sun moved slowly across the sky. "I came to apologize," Vethener said finally. "Not on behalf of the council. There is no council left. I came to apologize for myself. For my arrogance. For my cruelty. For everything." Catherine sipped her tea and said nothing. "I thought we were better than you," he continued. "We had lived among the stars for 40,000 years. We had built empires and conquered worlds. We had seen species come and go like seasons. And you were so young, so small, so different from us." He set down his cup and looked at his hands. "I never imagined that you were the ones holding everything together. I never imagined that our empire was built on your work, your ideas, your willingness to help us, even when we did not deserve it." "No," Catherine agreed. "You did not. I do not expect you to forgive me. I am not sure I would forgive myself if I were you." Catherine turned to look at him. She studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. She had spent her career learning to read alien expressions. She saw no lies in his eyes, only regret, only shame, only the weight of finally understanding what he had done. "Forgiveness is hard," she said. "I am not sure I can give it. Not yet. Maybe not ever." Vethener nodded slowly. "I understand, but I can give you something else." Catherine stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. "I can give you hope." "Hope for what?" "Hope that things can be different. Hope that the next time our peoples meet, we can meet as equals. Hope that the mistakes of the past do not have to be the rules for the future." She turned back to face him. "The council is gone. The old ways are finished. And now there is a choice to be made. We can all go our separate ways and never speak again. Or we can try to build something new. Something better. Something that treats everyone fairly, no matter how old or young their species is." Vethener stood up slowly. "You would work with us again? After everything?" "Not with the council. The council is dead, and it deserved to die. But with individuals? With people who have truly learned from their mistakes? Yes, I would work with them." She held out her hand in the human gesture of friendship. "This is how humans greet each other," she said. "As equals. Not as masters and servants. Not as superiors and inferiors. As equals." Vethener looked at her hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended one of his own and took it. "I have never shaken hands with a human before," he said. "It was considered beneath us." "I know. That was the problem." They stood there for a moment, two old enemies holding hands on a wooden porch while the sun set over the ocean. "What happens now?" Vethener asked. Catherine smiled. For the first time in many years, it was a genuine smile, full of warmth and possibility. "Now we start over. Now we build something new. And this time, we build it together." She looked out at the ocean, at the ships moving across the water, at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "You asked me once where we would go when we left the council. I told you we would go home. But home was never a place for us. Home was an idea. The idea that we could be free. The idea that we could be treated with dignity. The idea that we could shape our own destiny." She turned back to him. "Now that idea belongs to everyone. Not just humans. Everyone. That is what we always wanted. That is what we were always fighting for." Vethener looked at her with something new in his eyes. Something that might have been understanding. Something that might have been respect. "I think," he said slowly, "that we have much to learn from you." "Yes," Catherine agreed. "You do. But we have things to learn from you too. That is how it should be. That is how it always should have been." The stars came out one by one above them. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was rebuilding itself. Old empires were falling. New alliances were forming. Everything was changing. And at the center of it all, humanity stood ready. Not as masters, not as servants, but as equals. The humans had left quietly 10 years ago. Now they were ready to return. Not to the old council and its old ways, but to a new galaxy. A better galaxy. A galaxy that had finally learned the lesson that should have been obvious from the beginning. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Everyone deserves a voice. Everyone deserves to be seen as an equal dot. It had taken the fall of an empire for the galaxy to learn that lesson. But finally, at last, they had learned it, and the humans were ready to help them build something beautiful from the ashes. The end.